What if the greatest pay-per-view event in professional wrestling history is no longer the greatest anything? What if the show that built legends, shattered records, and made grown men cry watching their childhood heroes hold gold above their heads is now nothing more than a glorified episode of Monday Night Raw with a bigger budget? That's not me saying it. That's AJ Styles, the phenomenal one, a man who has wrestled everywhere from Tokyo Dome to Madison Square Garden. A man who bled for this business before WWE ever came calling. A man who, when he finally walked into WrestleMania, treated it like a religion. And now, he's calling it out. So before you scroll past this video, before you assume this is just another hot take from another wrestling channel, understand what is actually happening here. One of the most respected veterans in the entire industry is essentially standing up in church and telling the congregation that the altar is empty. That should scare you. That should anger you. And if you're a true wrestling fan, it probably already does. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to walk away seeing WrestleMania and WWE's future in a completely different light. Welcome to WrestleScope. Let's get into it. Let's set the record straight right from the jump, because the internet has a way of taking things out of context and running a marathon with them. AJ Styles, in a candid interview, made comments that sent shockwaves through the wrestling community. He expressed frustration, real, unfiltered frustration, about the direction of WrestleMania and what it means in today's WWE landscape. He suggested that the event has lost the prestige it once commanded, that it no longer feels like the sacred ground it used to be. Now, AJ didn't just throw a grenade and walk away. This wasn't a disgruntled guy venting for attention. This was a man with over 2 decades in professional wrestling, someone who has main evented WrestleMania, someone who has been a cornerstone of WWE programming for years, making a very deliberate, very pointed observation. And here's the twist that nobody is talking about. AJ Styles saying this in 2024 and beyond carries a fundamentally different weight than if a bitter ex-WWE star had said it from the outside. This is an insider. This is a guy who is still in the locker room, still suiting up, still performing. When your most loyal soldiers start questioning the mission, that's when you know something has gone seriously wrong. To understand why AJ's comments hit so differently, you have to understand what WrestleMania used to represent. Cast your mind back. Think about WrestleMania 3 in the Pontiac Silverdome. 93,173 fans watching Hulk Hogan body slam Andre the Giant. That moment didn't just main event a show. That moment became a cultural monument. Think about WrestleMania 17 in Houston, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock. That match didn't just headline a pay-per-view, it closed out an era. It was a Greek tragedy dressed in wrestling boots and a leather vest, and every single person watching knew they were witnessing something that would never happen again. Think about Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. Twice, back-to-back years. Matches so emotionally devastating that hardened wrestling veterans were left speechless. Matches that didn't just tell a story, they completed one. WrestleMania used to be the destination. The entire wrestling calendar rotated around it like planets around the sun. Every rivalry, every championship chase, every personal vendetta built toward that one weekend in late March or early April where everything finally exploded. It was a promise, and for decades, WWE kept that promise. Here's where we need to be brutally, uncomfortably honest. WrestleMania is now 2 nights long, and on paper, that sounds incredible. More matches, more moments, more opportunities for greatness. But in practice, it's been a double-edged sword buried handle deep into the prestige of the event itself. When you stretch WrestleMania across 2 nights, you inherently dilute it. What once felt like an impossible mountain to climb, a singular explosive event, now feels like a very expensive 2-part television special with a bigger budget. The urgency is gone, the scarcity is gone, and in entertainment, scarcity is value. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. The deeper issue is creative. For years now, WWE has been guilty of building WrestleMania matches in compressed timelines. You'll have a rivalry get 3 weeks of build before it headlines the grandest stage of them all. 3 weeks for a WrestleMania main event? Compare that to the 6-month slow burn of Stone Cold Steve Austin's descent into darkness heading into WrestleMania 17. Compare that to the year-long Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels saga. Compare that to Daniel Bryan's extraordinary underdog journey that made WrestleMania 30 feel like a genuine coronation. When the build is shallow, the payoff is hollow, and hollow WrestleMania moments don't echo through time. They don't become the stories you tell your kids about. They just fade. And AJ Styles, a man who has lived on the grandest stages, can feel that difference in his bones. Now here is where I want to offer you something different, something you won't hear on other wrestling channels. AJ Styles calling out WrestleMania's prestige isn't just a critique of WWE, it's a mirror being held up to all of us, the fans. Think about it. WrestleMania lost its prestige because we allowed it to, because we kept watching, because we kept buying the tickets and the Peacock subscriptions and the merchandise even when the product didn't earn it, because we kept giving standing ovations to mediocre build and average payoffs because the spectacle was loud enough to distract us from the emptiness underneath. The wrestling audience is the most loyal and sometimes the most self-destructive fan base in all of entertainment. We will defend things that hurt us. We will cheer for a product that disrespects our intelligence because the alternative, admitting that something we love has declined, is too painful. AJ Styles doesn't have that luxury of denial anymore. He's standing in the middle of it every single night. He's seeing firsthand what WrestleMania prep looks like behind the curtain. He's in the creative meetings. He's on the road. He knows what a properly built WrestleMania feels like because he's been a part of some great ones, and he knows when it doesn't feel that way. His frustration isn't cynicism, it's grief. It's the grief of watching something you love not live up to what it once was. And if we're being completely honest with ourselves, we feel it too, don't we? Now, to be fair, and WrestleScope is always going to give you both sides, WWE under Triple H's creative leadership has made significant improvements. The product since Triple H took over as Chief Content Officer has been, on balance, considerably better than the Vince McMahon creative era that immediately preceded it. Storytelling has improved, talent is being utilized more intelligently, there's a greater sense of long-term vision, matches are being given the room to breathe that they weren't getting for a long time. But here's the critical question: has WrestleMania specifically recaptured its magic? The answer, honestly, is partially. Glimpses, moments. There have been incredible WrestleMania matches in recent years. Sami Zayn's journey culminating at WrestleMania 39 was masterful storytelling. Cody Rhodes finally finishing his story at WrestleMania 40 was exactly the kind of emotionally resonant long-term payoff that WrestleMania was built to deliver. But those bright spots exist within a show that still struggles with pacing, with too many matches, with segments that belong on SmackDown rather than the grandest stage of them all. The foundation is being rebuilt, but the house isn't finished, and AJ Styles is standing in the unfinished hallway, looking at the exposed walls and the missing roof and asking the question all of us should be asking: when does it get done? So what's the fix? Because a great wrestling channel doesn't just diagnose the problem, it prescribes the cure. First, go back to one night. I know that's a controversial take. I know the two-night format generates significantly more revenue, but there is a version of one extraordinary, perfectly curated WrestleMania night that does more for the brand than 2 nights of content where the third hour feels like a bonus disc on a DVD nobody asked for. Second, build rivalries like they matter. Give your main event stories 5-6 months of runway. Make us need to see the conclusion. Make the journey so compelling that the destination feels like a release. That's what great storytelling does. Third, protect WrestleMania moments. Not every championship change needs to happen at WrestleMania, but the ones that do need to mean something. Stop undermining big moments with rematches and cash-ins and swerves that drain the emotional battery of the fan base. And fourth, listen to your veterans. When AJ Styles talks, WWE should be in the room taking notes, not disciplining him, not spinning his comments in PR statements, actually listening. Because AJ Styles has forgotten more about what makes professional wrestling great than most people in any creative room will ever know. Here's the truth that this whole conversation is really about. WrestleMania is not just a wrestling show. It is the single greatest argument that professional wrestling makes to the rest of the world that it deserves to be taken seriously. It is the event that turns casual fans into lifelong devotees. It is the show that a non-wrestling fan stumbles across and suddenly understands what all the fuss is about. When WrestleMania is great, truly historically great, it does more for this industry than 1,000 regular episodes of television ever could. And when it isn't, when it's bloated and underwhelming and forgettable, it does the opposite. It gives ammunition to everyone who has ever dismissed professional wrestling as silly. It confirms every doubt that the casual fan had before they gave it a chance. AJ Styles isn't being negative, he's being protective. He's fighting for WrestleMania's soul because he understands what's at stake if it loses it permanently. And frankly, so should we. The question isn't whether WrestleMania can be great again. It absolutely can. The question is whether WWE has the courage and the discipline to do what's necessary to make it great, even when the easier, more profitable path points in the other direction. That answer, my friends, will define the next decade of professional wrestling. All right, WrestleScope Nation, you know what time it is. Do you agree with AJ Styles? Has WrestleMania lost its prestige, or do you think the show is on the right track? Drop it in the comments right now. I want to read every single response. I want to know where you stand. And if this video made you think, if it fired you up, if it made you see something differently, then share it. Send it to your wrestling friends, post it in your wrestling groups, because this is exactly the conversation the wrestling community needs to be having right now. Hit that like button if you believe Wrestlemania can and should return to its former glory. Every like tells the algorithm that this content matters, and it helps WrestleScope keep bringing you the most in-depth, most honest wrestling analysis on YouTube. And if you haven't already, subscribe and ring that notification bell, because it